Hey y'all, it's Raizu here, and today we will be reacting to Aki versus Megumi. My predictions is if Maharaga comes out, Aki's cooked. I'm not gonna lie, that's just how OP Maharaga is. But I mean, he gonna bring him out, bro. It's Megumi. Megumi is going to spam Maharaga, so I got Megumi winning. Let's get into the video.
Megumi Fushiguro and Aki
I
Hayakawa, two
bet.
stoic characters that in a world full of crazy devils and demons almost come off as normal by comparison. Two fighters who rely heavily on summons
They're
or
both just
powers
chill,
manifested outside
honestly.
of themselves, and two characters that I'll be pitting against each other in this video. As I've done rather consistently on the channel, I'll be comparing these two characters on the basis of their strength, speed, durability, and hacks, all in order to determine who
I haven't
would
seen the manga
win.
of Chainsaw Man though, so
Unlike
I'm
in
not
many other
sure what
scaling
Aki
videos I've
got.
done covering Jujutsu Kaisen characters going up against other universes, discussing how a battle between Megumi and Aki plays out doesn't rely on the highest tier of scaling that each story has to offer. Given their roles in the story and the points at which they're, let's just say, indisposed, both of these fighters are much more representative of the mid-tier of their respective stories and the
That's valid,
crazier stuff
honestly.
that comes later, and as such,
They
we gotta
can
get a
box
little
to
bit
some
more
degree,
into
but
the
I
weeds
mean,
than usual. Aki's
not like
attack potency and
Itadori or
durability is a
people from
pretty good
Aki.
place to start though. Throughout the manga, Aki doesn't really get to show off crazy levels of destructive ability in the same vein as devils, fiends, and hybrids might be able to due to their wacky powers. While he's capable of stabbing Katana Man with his cursed sword and later cutting off one of Rize's limbs, this doesn't really make him all that impressive in the grand scheme of things. Devils and hybrids like this mostly rely on the regenerative factor to get by in high level fights, and his inability to survive strikes
True.
from either devil mentioned is exemplary of this difference. Katana Man, upon getting serious, nearly cuts Aki in two, and he has to completely avoid Rize's explosive amped punches in order to survive, as even attempting to block would be ineffective. Because of this, the greatest display of physical force
On
Aki
is
has at
still
his
like an
disposal
amazing
comes in the
ability
way
that
of
he
the Fox
has. I mean,
Devil,
he
as
had
on
it.
numerous occasions the appearance of this fox is shown demolishing buildings and should place him somewhere within that tier with this summon in tow. Technically, Aki shouldn't really have the Fox Devil in his arsenal and the future sight that I'll discuss a bit more in the hack section, since forcing it to eat Katana Man essentially terminated their contract, but I think interpreting this as a composite Aki with all of his techniques, contracts, and abilities he had accrued over the course of Chainsaw Man makes for a much more interesting discussion. Even with this devil in the back pocket though, with just a cursory knowledge on JJK, I'm sure that you'd be aware that building level attack potency from the jump just isn't enough to cut it, even against Megumi, who's on the lower end physically. And Aki's
Okay.
durability only being somewhat above that isn't all too encouraging either. Building level feats are quite abundant in the
When he
Jujutsu
said
Kaisen
Genji
universe,
here, but
even
I
in
was
the
shocked,
earliest
bro.
parts of the story.
I was shocked
For
he actually
context,
survived.
this omnidirectional blast that the first finger bearer makes, the one that Yuji is capable of surviving before learning how to manipulate cursed energy, yeah, that attack is of a significantly different scale than what Colin is able to achieve in the story. Even doing the absolute bare minimum for Megumi places him above that by way
This
of
finger
combating
bearer
a
is
stronger
so
finger bearer. Not
creepy,
only does
bro.
Megumi survive multiple
Especially when he
direct attacks
popped
from the
up.
cursed
Oh my
spirit, but his
gosh.
own physical strength and Divine Dog's claws are more than powerful enough to rip its heart out. This isn't all though. Due to cursed spirits like Naoya being explicitly stated to be inferior to Hanami in overall toughness, Megumi, or more specifically, Divine Dog, should scale appropriately to multi-city block tiers of strength due to a calc estimating the destruction of Naoya's first blitz attempt, which he obviously survived. Realistically, you could push this even higher given Kamo's statement of Naoya's durability coming after a transformation of sorts, but it's just hard to approximate what exactly this would mean in terms of calculable durability and attack potency. This isn't even too inconsistent either with Megumi's relativity to early Shibuya Yuji and superiority to a nerfed Nanami while being weakened himself. If you wanted to get crazy, you could even make a point about Megumi's confidence in being able to harm Toji, despite
Oh, yeah,
seeing him take on
him against
Dagon in the
Toji,
fashion
bro.
that he did. However, that's
I'm glad
much
to see
more
my
of a
boy being back,
far-fetched
but
interpretation and not really
sad,
necessary
but the
to
way
have
he
him
went out,
confidently
bro,
combat Aki in this stat.
makes
This
sense,
shrink up
but
may lead
still.
you to believe that Aki is inherently
He was putting
cooked
BT on
just
Megumi
based
for
on this
sure.
fact alone, but due to the contracts made with numerous devils in the story, his hacks don't exactly limit him to his own physical capabilities. The Fox Devil, for example, isn't a summon necessarily meant to just chew Aki's opponents to bits. Rather, it can be utilized to consume swallow, and then remove an opponent from the battlefield. Assuming that it's capable of this, which it should be given its size relative to Megumi, there is an argument for Fushiguro getting consumed by Kon under the right or wrong set of circumstances, depending on which side of the fence you find yourself on. The only contention with this is one of Megumi's power in comparison to Kon. While it is capable of putting creatures in its mouth that are more powerful in itself, as demonstrated with the Bomb Devil and Katana Man,
They still
anytime
cut
it
out.
does this, we see Kon react like it ate some bad food and either dissipate or be torn up from the inside out. I'm not necessarily inclined to believe that it'd react poorly to consuming Megumi, considering that he's fully human, but as demonstrated with Katana Man, should be significantly more powerful than what it
Oh, he's
controls.
underground
So
fight
whether he
too.
responds by bringing out one of his cursed tools and simply
Megumi was
slashes
boxing
me
here, I
out,
won't
or
lie.
summoning
Need the
a
flexor
Shikigami
code.
from the outside to handle it, Kon is a summon that Megumi shouldn't struggle with too heavily, or rather is at least a devil that he has a particular counter for. In the event that this is ineffective, Aki should still be able to use his Cursed Sword, a weapon that upon piercing an enemy 3 times can call on the Cursed Devil to instantly kill them. This should outright
It's
work
like
on Megumi. There's
the
no real
Judgment
resistance to
Sword
this kind of
that
attack demonstrated
Higurama
in the
got.
story, unless you were somehow
Actually, his
of the
a one-
belief that
his a
cursed
one-
energy gives them a resistance to
but
the
it's
Cursed
similar.
Devil, which I don't really buy, so we're going to ignore that altogether. Regardless of base physicals, Aki in theory, due to something like the Cursed Sword, should be able to kill Megumi if he lands 3 separate blows. Now, he doesn't typically use this approach when fighting, at least to start a battle, because it drains him of his lifespan, but as demonstrated, he's more than willing to make that sacrifice against an opponent who's clearly too strong to be dealt with via conventional means. A strategy that just relies on 3 well-placed strikes paired with his ability to peer a few seconds in the future, and well, let's just say that there's certainly an argument to be had. Megumi's win condition is quite a bit simpler in comparison, whether
Hey, it's me, Raizu. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps me very much. Let's get back into the video.
himself or using Divine Dog to stab Aki or Max Elephant to crush him, Fushiguro isn't exactly limited in ways to kill Aki because of the strength differential. That being said, as mentioned, Aki too has ways to win. This makes speed the primary point of contention, left aside from speculation on how these characters' hacks, combat skills, and respective battle IQs would play a part in this battle. And on the topic of speed, things are a bit closer than they may initially seem. Scaling Megumi's reaction and combat speed is quite a bit tougher than what it seems like on the surface, mainly because he doesn't fight that many characters with abundant feats or calculated showings, which means the main way to get an accurate read on how quick he is would be through comparison. During the Goodwill event, Megumi showed that while he was less skilled and possibly less agile than Maki overall, he was capable of fighting alongside her relatively in their skirmish with Hanami. Earlier in this arc, she catches a bullet from point blank range, which even if you go with the lowest possible interpretation of this feat, would make her and Megumi around 30% the speed of sound. Some calculations of the bullet catching feat get this all the way up to 7 times the speed of sound, but let's just go with conservative estimates for the time being.
Okay,
After
7,
this arc,
that's
Megumi
fine.
goes on to get quite a bit stronger and more proficient with sorcery in a holistic sense, and this is clearly demonstrated by him being comparably fast to Yuji, someone more physically capable than Maki even before unlocking a new level through Black Flashes. Not only do we see Megumi and Yuji fighting in tandem against Awasaka, something that pretty demonstrably makes them even, but Megumi even makes it clear that while he finds it difficult, he's capable of fighting alongside Yuji without slowing him down. Out of the 3 combatants, he's also the only one to not take damage in this fight, despite getting up close pretty frequently, with even Yuji getting cut up by one of Awasaka's slashes. It's important to note this relativity due to Yuji being able to dodge piercing blood later in Shibuya. The calcs for this range anywhere from 2 to 5 times the speed of sound, as a necessary speed to avoid the attack in which Yuji did. And for all of the aforementioned reasons, I think Megumi should scale to this. If you want more of an in-depth explanation on my thoughts on the subject
the bathroom scene,
specifically,
bruh,
on the topic
they were
of
boxing
Yuji,
like
Megumi
crazy in here.
relativity, and the piercing blood feat in general, you can check out my Megumi versus Choso video. I go
Oh,
over that really in
I'm
depth.
gonna have
But
to
for the
watch
time
that,
being,
bro.
the
Megumi
logic
versus
is kind of
Choso?
simple. Yuji's reactions scale anywhere from Mach 2 to 5. Megumi is relative to this Yuji. Therefore, he scales anywhere from Mach 2 to Mach 5. Aki, by comparison, is in the same ballpark, just not quite there, at least in regards to the upper limits of Megumi's speed scaling. Subsonic bullet blocking feats from random fiends and Denji could place him anywhere from about 60 to 80% the speed of sound, and if you really wanted to push it, you could say that he should scale to the Angel Devil to some extent, and thus be grandfathered into this Mach 3-ish bullet blocking feat. The only basis for saying Aki's relative would be the fact that he's placed there to watch over him, but is it especially especially flimsy
Oh,
argument
his
that we know the
tongue out
same
like
thing is true
that.
for Denji in power, and he really shouldn't be more physically capable than either of them. It's not an impossible leap in logic to make, just one that requires you to cook the books in Aki's favor a little bit. This estimate would place him smack dab in the middle of the range of speed that I established for Megumi. So while a highballed version of him would simply outpace Aki, because of how close they are, we can just say they're peers in the speed department, absolute, even, or relative at the bare minimum. Aki, however, has the advantage of precog and an ability
Yeah,
that
future
Megumi
sight.
simply wouldn't grasp the rules of in the back pocket with the curse sword. Victory, in this case, should be theoretically possible, landing
From
3
Aki.
pretty inconsequential seemingly
Okay,
hits
that
on a
makes
character
sense.
that
If
you're
he gets the
relative
3
to
hits,
isn't all
yeah,
that
that makes sense.
far-fetched. The main obstacle that stands in the way between Aki landing these 3 attacks and securing a victory is the massive gap in combat ability that comes from things outside of pure physical stats. Megumi doesn't have the ability to read seconds into the future, I grant you, but dealing with opponents significantly faster than himself is a feat he's also demonstrated a capacity for, as he was able to avoid getting blitzed and skewered by Toji on numerous occasions, despite being exponentially slower. So much so that he was able to get dragged from inside to outside randomly in Shibuya without even noticing. This is largely because of his craftiness and versatility of his curse technique, and this doesn't just apply to Megumi's hacks. I also think that he is more capable in a straight brawl and should be quite a bit smarter than Aki in the realm of combat. While I wouldn't say that Aki's a slouch in the mental
Intentional
department,
man,
he
that's what they
simply
call
doesn't
him.
have the intelligence showings to stand up to Megumi's numerous feats of deduction and deception, whether that be in
Ski
figuring out
mask.
Awasaka's inverse curse technique, sneakily deploying shadows to throw off Toji's footing, or tricking Reggie into thinking that he was all out of tricks. Time and time again, Fushiguro's shown that he's able to impress, even when fighting a bit outside of his weight class, and in tandem with several Shikigami, many of which being relative or above Megumi in certain stats, Aki just has no way of dealing with him. His future sight is very, very useful, especially when dealing with an opponent one-on-one, but pretty much every time Aki does use this technique from the Future Devil, the limits of it are put on display for all to see. A sheer number of attacks can overwhelm him, and he consciously has to make the best possible decision at every turn, something that Megumi would probably pick up on quite quickly. When we're talking about a character who's crafty enough to deploy a technique successfully on Toji, and even Sukuna to a lesser extent, a bit of Future Sight doesn't necessarily close that gap. Megumi, for all of his shortcomings, is an extremely competent and resourceful character
Bakuna
with
vs
the
Megumi's
Shikigami
fight, bro.
allotted to
That was
him. He doesn't
embarrassing for
resign himself
Megumi.
to fight at a distance, nor charge in
So
blindly,
Bakuna was tossing
mixing
him
the
around like a
two pretty
ragdoll.
elegantly, in my opinion. If Aki and Megumi were trading blows back and forth, with neither of them really sustaining damage, Aki would have to somehow use his Future Sight to avoid a Shadow Dog faster and stronger than he is,
Cause Megumi
a
could just
lightning bird that can
spawn
descend
all
from the
his
sky at any
things
moment and
and
stun
jump
him, an
Aki.
elephant that'll do the same thing or douse him with water, an endless
So,
barrage of rabbits, or a toad that can throw off his rhythm and sword strikes. Megumi's willingness and ability to jump in and out of close range at a moment's notice just gives him so many more possibilities than Aki has or can reasonably deal with. This isn't even to mention Megumi potentially using his own domain expansion, a technique that
oh
in all
yeah,
likelihood
domain.
would have Aki sinking into a bottomless abyss of shadows where he just
It would be
suffocates.
it would be
Regardless of
cooked
your
for
stance on
Aki if he
equalizing the
gets his
verse of his
domain
curse
out.
energy or not, Megumi still gets the benefits of the boost to proficiency, cloning, and enhanced Shikigami.
I
And since
forgot he
he's
could
never
clone
relied on a
himself.
sure hit ability in his arsenal, whether or not Aki could be targeted would be of no concern to him. No matter which way you slice it, even if we presume complete equality in the stats department, Megumi is a better fighter, a smarter fighter, and a guy with
He
more
got more
options than Aki
variety,
has
bro.
solutions. If you enjoyed this
I'm not gonna
video, you
lie.
should check out my
It
thoughts
makes
on
sense. If Aki can land the 3 hits, then Megumi's cooked. But I mean, if he don't land those 3 hits, then Megumi wins with all his variety, better combat, and bro, heck, if he wants to, he still can spawn Maharaga, bro. So I think it makes sense that Megumi wins. I was right on that. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe. I'm gonna see you on the next one. Peace.